Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the FIDIC webinar on digital transformation. My name is Dr. Nelson Ogunshaki. I'm the CEO of FIDIC. I'm sure most of you know who I am. It's been a while since I came on this channel. I had a break and the industry be kind to me. Today, I'm really delighted to sort of, open up this particular webinar where we'll be talking about digital transformation, one of the latest, and I mean one of the latest subjects that FIDIC has been dealing with. This is really highly appreciated by the board. And today we're going to cover the issue about what is our Digital Transformation Committee up to in terms of their aims, objectives, and what they need to do. And what does really the digital transformation means to a lot of people, means different things to different people, and what are the trends and the challenges and technology that goes with it. So today, we have a fantastic panel who's going to talk over, the conversation. And that particular panel is going to be led by Stacy Sinclair. And she's the chair of the Digital Transformation Committee by FIDIC, and she is also a partner at Fenwick Elliott law firm in London, I believe. So without further ado, I'm going to move on to the next line, which is really to remind you about the FIDIC global goals. It is not any surprise. We are now talking about COP27. Last year it was COP26, and we made a commitment that we want to make sure that the industry sign up to the charter. If you have not done so, please click on and sign up very quickly. What we call the climate change is real. The infrastructure industry have a role to play. You will probably be following up on our social media or what we've been trying to do in that area. Watch this space. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Stacy, who is going to take control of the section. So Stacy, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nelson, very much. Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to today's session. I hear we have a number of people joining us today from around the world, and I think that that's a real testament to just how important and how fundamental this topic is to the future of our industry. So thank you very much for joining us today on this very important topic. As Nelson mentioned, my name is Stacy Sinclair. I'm the chair of FIDIC's newly formed Digital Transformation Committee, and I'm delighted to be joined today by three of our committee members. We've got Tony Scott, CEO and CIO of Neural Rays AI. We have Antoine Labrosse, Chief Digital Officer at Artelia Group. We have Bram Mommers, the Digital Technology Officer at Arcadis. In addition, we are very pleased to be joined today with our very special guest, Claire Rutkowski, SVP and CIO champion at Bentley Systems. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I know some of you are early risers this morning because we're all across the globe, so thank you very much. So as Nelson mentioned, today's topic, of course, is going digital, the digital transformation of our industry, the latest trends and developments. So I think it's fair to say that the sheer amount of technology which exists today is just astonishing. I mean, we have everything from AI, machine learning, data analytics, drones, design configurators, digital twins, blockchain, smart contracts, you name it, contract review automation platforms, risk management platforms. The list is endless. So technology is really pervading all aspects of design, procurement, construction, and operation. The whole life cycle of both new buildings, assets and infrastructure, and importantly, as well as existing buildings, assets and infrastructure, obviously ever so important in today's climate change issues. And indeed, it's already proving to be that enabler, providing those solutions to these very serious issues that we're facing today: climate change, sustainability, connection, connectivity in the era of COVID-19. But true digital transformation of the industry. What does that mean? Where do we start? What does it look like? What does it smell like? That's really the subject of the next hour and a half for us here. First, we're going to look at just that. What is it? What does it mean? Where do you start, importantly, recognizing that everyone's on a different trajectory, different maturity. And then secondly, we're going to look at the trends and technologies. Where is the industry at? What are we seeing? Now, as I just mentioned, whilst the industry is, I think it's fair to say, it's quite fragmented, and organizations and industry sectors around the world are each moving at different paces, some glacially slow, perhaps others at a bolting breakneck speed. And indeed, they're in very different places in terms of their digital maturity and roadmaps. But where I'd like to start actually is it'd be good to see at least where on this call, where is everyone's mindset at today? What do you think of the industry? Even if your industry or organization isn't at that bolting breakneck speed of transformation, what do you think? Do you think we're ready for it? And I think let's kick off with this quick poll that we have for everyone today with this question that's just popped up on the screen. So what do you think? Is the overall ecosystem of our industry, meaning its people, its processes, are we ready for digital transformation? We've got a yes, a no, and an in part, if you'd like to sit on the fence. Now, I do take the point that what we haven't yet broached the subject of what is digital transformation, no doubt means something different to everyone. But just as a starter for 10, what do you think? Maybe a few more seconds. There we go. We've got 26% saying, yes, we're ready. Better than zero. 15% saying no, also equally positive. And so 60% saying in part, something's ready. What's ready for digital transformation? I think that's really interesting. And hopefully today's session will give some more insight into the challenges, perhaps the perceived barriers or actual barriers to digital transformation. And what do we need to do to unlock this, to really get a cracking start on this? So thank you very much for that poll. Right, before we delve into our first major topic, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of this newly formed Digital Transformation Committee. As one of the objectives of the committee very much is to assist FIDIC members and indeed the wider industry as a whole in reaching this digital transformation, getting us ready, providing that educational piece to enable success. So about six months ago, April 2022, FIDIC announced the formation of the new Digital Transformation Committee. Apologies if the acronym DTC pops up, Digital Transformation Committee. But the purpose of the new committee is really to identify issues and trends in this digital space that could be potential disruptors both to FIDIC as well as its members in the wider industry. The committee is to monitor and identify changes in digital technologies that not only future-proof, but also transform FIDIC's products and services, such as the FIDIC contract suite, develop FIDIC's value proposition for the digital services, as well as advise and monitor large digital programs in conjunction with the FIDIC Secretariat. Now, the strategic priorities that we're really set and focused on, which is outlined in our terms of reference, these include advocating and guiding on the new and existing technologies out there across the consulting engineering industry, completing and publishing guidance on digital platforms that would be of use to FIDIC members, advising and assisting FIDIC in the digitization and in due course, digitalization of the FIDIC contract suite in order to aid productivity, user friendliness, modernization, and so forth. And of course, exploring new technologies, products, and services that FIDIC could offer its members and the wider sector. So, no small feat, but we do have 12 extremely expert and very experienced committee members from across the engineering and digital communities who are really passionate about the transformation of our industry. And it's just fantastic to have them all together and to be kicking off this journey with them, 3 of which are on today's panel. And this enthusiasm and energy, it's clear within the committee, but it's also clear within FIDIC and its members and its global contract users. And I say this because we've had a number of people reach out to get involved, which has just been fantastic. And really, I'm looking forward to seeing that even growing as we progress. And as I said, we're very much at the outset at the minute. So the launch of the Digital Transformation Committee does really, in my view, demonstrate FIDIC's recognition of this fundamental role that technology will play in the future for the industry, and indeed already has, as well as FIDIC's commitment to supporting its members on this journey. So it's all very exciting. I'm delighted to be involved. And whilst, just to turn now to our first question, whilst the Digital Transformation Committee is very much at the outset of this journey, in a period of listening and learning, understanding what members want, as well as picking up on the industry. We're very much at the outset of establishing the activities and the task groups and so on and so forth. There are very much two work streams which are clear and are picking up momentum. And the first one is the digitization, and as I mentioned in due course, the digitalization of the FIDIC contract suite. And secondly, identifying the transformation vision, really developing a clear, coherent, compelling vision for digital transformation in the industry. And it's this second work stream which today's discussion is really going to feed into and inform. So really do pop your questions in the chat box, and we'll try and get to as many of those as we can. If not, please do reach out to me or Nelson afterwards if you'd like to be involved or have further questions or information about the committee. So without further delay, let's get going, shall we? Over to the panel. We are going to kick off with our first major theme of today, the question of what is digital transformation? What does this mean? Where do you start? And what do you need to be aware of? What are all the issues out there that we need to be alive to? So each of our panels is going to speak briefly to this one question, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion as a community afterwards. So if we could kick off, Antoine, with you, if you don't mind. What is digital transformation? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, thank you, Stacy. So by saying digital transformation, you sort of work your way, you avoid the question of digitalization or digitization. And if you're not a native English speaker like myself, it's even hard just to say the two words. But let's say, to make it very simple, I would say digitization is simply transforming something from a physical asset into a digital equivalent. So your paper payslip becomes a PDF file. And that's all the lower end of the spectrum of digitalization, which is a much broader process, which of course involves moving things into digital format, but it should do much more than that. And let me give you one example. There are now a number of companies providing digital credit cards. So not only do you not have the physical little plastic object in your hand, but if it's just, hosted in your phone instead, that it's not a huge value proposition. However, in addition to the payment services with these cards, you can, for example, you can switch your credit card on and off to avoid fraud, so you can turn it off when you're not using it. You can issue a one-day credit card or a one-hour credit card you can give to your kids so they can go shopping for you. And these are things you can't do simply in the analog world. So what we're talking about today, when we say digital transformation, it is digitalization, which is a bigger process. And whether it's transformation, evolution, or revolution, I think it's a matter of speed. And it's also a matter of whether the whole ecosystem is ready for it, and whether whatever business you're in can actually be replaced overnight or not with a digital equivalent. And all VHS tapes with movies could be replaced almost overnight with a streaming version. However, I do not believe that our industry will revolutionize overnight. It's simply not possible, such as what happened in hospitality or entertainment business. So it is going to be an evolution or a transformation, if you want. You asked us, what does it mean? I think for me, it's probably not very fancy, but the way I explain it in my organization is that the digital transformation is about using digital technologies to create value. And it's super simple. And these technologies don't have to be rocket science. Some of them are already very mature and exist in other industries. But the point is that the technology is a means to achieve value creation. And when I was hired, I think some people expect that I would come with lots of gadgets, and people on the desk would have new kinds of phones and fancy keyboards and sit around with 3D goggles. And that's not at all what it's been about. So what we need is to look at our industry and see, do we believe that it's possible to create additional value in the AEC industry? And technology is a way to enable that. And the change has to be sustainable, it has to be significant, and it has to be systemic. Otherwise, you could probably more call it a gadget. Right? So you ask us what does it, that's what it means, and where do you need to start, where do you need to be aware of? Well, I think you need to be aware of that, the fact that it's a holistic change. So it's not, technology might be the most obvious component, but it's about the technology, it's the people, the competences of people, it's your processes, it's the user experience, and it's business models. People, that's always I think the part that might be forgotten by some, but it's the most important. Right? The most important is that shift towards what is typically light asset or value-based business models. That is really fundamental, and all of those things tie together. So when in the survey, most of you answered that we're partly along the way of digitalization. That I think is quite, it's a very scary place to be, because we are at risk of ending up in a vicious circle where if you do things partly, you don't harvest the full value of digitalization. It's a sort of a you do it or you don't do it thing. Imagine like if you were the first guy to buy a fax machine, it had very little value for you. So you need the whole ecosystem and you need volume to harvest the value. And if we're halfway there, the people calling the shots they'll see the expenses and the cost, but they won't really see a smashing value proposition, and hence they'll cut down on investments, which will make the value proposition even harder, and then we spiral downwards towards the old analog world. So I would say that it's a holistic thing. So we need to look at it from all these perspectives and work on all of them in parallel. We need to be aware that it's going to be long, it's going to be expensive, but I would dare ask the question, what's the alternative? Unless some of us want to be a vintage engineering company or a vintage construction company, which can have its charm, but probably a limited market impact, then there is actually no real other path to take.
Thank you very much, Antoine. That's fantastic. I mean, absolutely, we want to be not in that alternative place, not dealing with gadgets. Thank you so much. And Tony, I think following on from Antoine, it'd be fantastic if you could give your view on what is digital transformation.
Yeah, thanks, Stacey. I'd certainly echo everything Antoine just said. So what is digital transformation? I thought a good place to start is perhaps what digital transformation is not. And digital transformation is not just about automating our current ways of working to make them faster, cheaper, or more efficient. These are all noble aspirations, of course, but they're the ones we've been achieving through software and IT for decades. They are what we mean by the term digitization. Still very important, but it's different from digitalization. The digital transformation, to me, is about using innovative and emerging digital technologies to create positive human and business, and I mentioned human and business outcomes that previously would have been thought impossible, or more exciting for me, were not even imaginable. And this is what we mean when we use the term digitalization. And we can apply this into all areas of an enterprise, a program of work, major infrastructure development. But most importantly, digital transformation is about taking an outcomes-first approach and using our expertise, our technology expertise, to apply the appropriate digital technologies to achieve an end solution. So I'll just reiterate that. Digital transformation is about taking an outcomes-first approach. So this is very much not about solutions looking for problems. And I worked in technology for many, many years, and I've seen that happen so many times. But it's more about problems looking for solutions. So, and I say as a technologist again, technology must always be seen as a means to an end and never the end in itself. So today, technology is advancing so rapidly that no one company can be the leader across all digital service domains, which is why partnering is so key to digital transformation success. And a lot of my work I do is very much working in partnership. The real market differentiator for us all as companies, but also for us as individuals, is in being able to work together with our clients to innovate around outcomes. In doing so, our expertise is in choosing and implementing the right technology mix from our digital services toolbox. And again, I'll be talking about outcomes quite a bit, because to me, that is the real takeaway about what digital transformation is. You start with the outcomes rather than the technology. So the most important factor in any digital transformation is the human element, or that of the ultimate client and beneficiary. So that could be the resident, the shopper, the patient, the employee, the student, the passenger, or any other end consumer of what we are creating. This is very much why my company's slogan is Solutions for a Better World. So we were asked, where do we start and what do we need to be aware of? So to me, digital transformation can clearly be seen as being more about transformation than it is about digital. That is, no matter how expert we are, we don't start with big data, artificial intelligence, robotics, virtual reality, augmented reality, drones, IoT, or digital twins. But we start with the outcomes we want to achieve using some or all of those. And only then do we use our technical expertise to match the appropriate digital services to the solution at hand. However, in saying all of that, the one constant in digital transformation is data, which is ever more abundant, and when used appropriately, and that is really key, it's open to harnessing in rich and ever more innovative ways. So in creating a culture of data-driven engineering innovation, I believe we can learn a lot from the user-centered, lean, agile, and product management methodologies of the software engineering industry. To think big, to start small and scale quickly. That's probably the key mantra of my company's client engagements. I'll repeat that: to think big, so to be ambitious, to start small, and then to be able to scale quickly. And this includes ideation and experimental techniques such as hackathons and minimum viable products, which are crucially important in both software and data-led projects. And hackathons, people often think of coding exercises, but they don't have to be. I've been involved in hackathons around traffic flow on freeways, around passenger experiences in airports, that there are many, many, many opportunities to really think outside the box and to use techniques such as hackathons to do that. And then out the back of that, hopefully you'll get some ideas that you can then, you don't need to over-engineer, you can create an MVP, a minimum viable product, and get real-world feedback from that. So another principle is to fail fast and fail cheaply. And I know failure is not something the engineering world is used to tolerating, but really it is a principle that derived from the lean startup world. And the key here is to have disciplined, agile, and human-centric processes that make experimentation with real-world feedback possible. And finally, finding the right clients who are open to such experimental, data-driven, outcomes-first approaches is crucially important also. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tony. I mean, the think big, start small, scale quickly, fail fast. I mean, fantastic, and really building on what Antoine was saying earlier, and the outcomes-based approach, I'm sure we'll come back to in a bit. Bram, I'm wondering if you want to follow on from Tony with your insights.
Thank you. Sorry for my voice. It's still early morning. Thank you for having us. So I think that Tony and Antoine already shared a lot about digitization and digitalization, and I really recognize that. Like it is like about make your data digital, and make your world digital and digital format, automate it, and then that also provide opportunities to present new business models. In short. And to give a bit of different perspective, I can add to it so talk about agile and the things that Tony shared. But I'm going to share a bit of my personal story. Some people already heard about it, but I think we have now so many people on the call who didn't. I'm just going to do it again. And that story is about me as being a land surveyor. Because yes, right now I'm leading the technology organization of Arcadis, but I am actually a land surveyor. That's how I was trained. And I did that in the past. I chose for that profession because I saw those land surveyors, the heroes in the 30s, walking around with their equipment and doing the measurements, building big stuff like dams and bridges. And I wanted to do the same thing. So I went to school, I studied land surveying, and what we had to do quite quickly was to program stuff, because land surveying is all about data. And in the time that I went to school, you know, we already went from analog instruments into digital instruments, and the information came in a digital way. So I had to learn how to program. The industry had to learn how to program. So from having big teams working with analog instruments, you have this digital equipment with fewer people to do it. And by the time I finished my education and I went to the industry and made a proper living for myself, GPS came up. So not only like the traditional instruments were digitized, yet also new technologies like GPS. And quite quickly we embraced that as land surveyors, and we use that to do the measurements. And I must say that we were in the Netherlands, where I'm from. Our company was one of the first companies embracing GPS technology, and we made a hell amount of money. We were the first ones, early adapters, and we were very successful. It was a great time to begin. But you know, before you know it, everybody has this equipment, and you know, everybody has a smartphone. I have also one here. You cannot see it because of the reflections of the camera. And in a smartphone, there's a GPS receiver inside. And now everybody is a land surveyor. And the big engineering companies who had like hundreds of people doing land surveying on projects, they were let go in a lot of cases. Well, the smaller companies who embraced digital technologies found ways to harvest that, to be innovative with it, to have a different kind of cost model and be very successful. So my profession as a land surveying has dramatically changed. I had to pick another job. I am now the CTO. Great job, by the way. I'm very honored. But my profession has changed. And that will happen to more things we are doing, like as engineers. The things how we have done things in the past with pen and paper, it's changing into a digital environment. It will become automated, and it makes new business models possible. So for me, that is digital transformation. And how do we all together get through that process? That means for every organization a little bit different, something different, but the main journey is the same as we see with other industries and as we have seen in land surveying. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bram. That's a fantastic story. And I think a reminder to all that we're needing to get on board or perhaps be left behind in some senses. We can only obviously think of Kodak and all the other examples. But Bram, thank you very much. That was, and I no doubt we're going to come on to the new business models and so forth. Such a wide subject, obviously. Claire, can we turn to you and your view on digital transformation?
Absolutely. Thanks, Stacy. So I do agree. I think the definitions given for digital transformation are all excellent. The application of digital technologies to provide value and an outcome, as opposed to technology for the sake of technology, are really good principles to follow. And I work for a software company, so you would think I would say, no, just get the latest thing. But no, because there has to be a purpose to it, and it has to deliver something of value. So for me, digital transformation, I agree with the definitions. It's the application of technology, digital technology, in order to provide outcomes and value. But it isn't about the technology. It's about the outcomes and value. It's about the people and process changes that have to happen as well. And one of the questions you asked was, where do you start? And I think this is important, and it's a little bit intimidating for people because you have to start where you are. I think Florin had put in the chat, some people use Microsoft Office and Solitaire, and that's about it, right? So point taken. And I think many people have been doing digital transformation like Bram, like myself with my own background for many, many years. But for some companies, it's a new thing. And digital transformation sounds really scary because it's transformation. That's like a big deal. And so I think that you have to start where you are. And that's really important. And I think Tony might have mentioned starting where you are. So for some companies, digital transformation starts with simple things like going from 2D to 3D and improving the efficiency of your organization through automated workflows, component-based design, things like that. For some companies who are already there, digital transformation looks a little bit different. For them, digital transformation means changing the effectiveness of their organization. They're not focused on efficiency anymore because they've kind of nailed that. They're focused on how can I be more effective? What more deliverables can I give to my clients that are digital in nature, whether they're digital twins or other types of outcomes and deliverables. And then when we get to digital maturity, now we're talking about true transformation. Can I look at data across my entire portfolio of projects and find insights and analytics that can be applied either to an existing client set or to other client sets? Can I find new business models, which I'm sure we're going to talk about? But I think that's where you start. You start where you are and don't be intimidated. And again, as others have mentioned, use an ecosystem of partners. It doesn't have to be you. You don't have to go hire 50 developers if you're a small company, right? That's probably not going to happen anytime soon. So leverage your partners, leverage your ecosystem, reach out and work with others. And the final part of your question was, what do we need to be aware of? I think we need to be aware of a few things. We need to be aware of what is it our clients are asking for. Otherwise, we're back to gadgets and things and shiny things that we want to play with. So there has to be a purpose to it. What problem are we trying to solve, or what opportunity are we trying to provide to our clients so that we make sure that we're adding value? And we also have to be very aware that digital transformation is not about the technology. The technology is a tool. It is about the people and the processes that go with that technology that help enable the digital transformation. Otherwise, we're just throwing tools at things, and that doesn't actually get us anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. I think that really is summing up with all of the speakers. What the whole panel has been really chiming into, and about the outcomes. And thank you for the start where you are, realize where you're at, and before you can decide where you're going to go. But then to Bram's point, if you don't go somewhere, you might be left behind. We've got a few minutes, I think, before we move on to part two, if you will. So I think it'd be great to have a discussion, trying to pick up some of the questions in the chat and so forth, and building on what everyone said right now. I mean, to me, one of the themes that's really coming out is these outcomes-based approach, new business models. Does anyone want to say anything further on that? What are these new business models? How can we encourage people in the industry to embrace this change, these new ways of working? Does anyone want to pick up and carry on in that vein, or otherwise?
Yeah, I can jump in and kick us off. I think when we think about the industry as it exists today, we have a major problem with resource constraints, with the talent shortage, and with being able to deliver the infrastructure the world needs at the pace that the world needs it. And so one example, a very relatively easy example, would be component-based design. If we change our processes, and we're on process now, right? If we change our processes so that we can apply component-based design to what we do, then we have much greater throughput. And that throughput helps us with backlog. The average backlog for engineering firms right now globally is about 15, 16 months. That's a lot of backlog. There are firms turning down work because they can't actually staff the jobs. Which is crazy, but it's true. So if we have component-based design, we can increase our throughput and get more done and deliver more to our clients. And that's a rather low-level digital transformation example. That also helps with capturing the knowledge, right? That goes into designing a valve or a pump or a water treatment facility and allowing it to be reused by the next person who's onboarding and maybe newer to the profession. So I think that's a relatively low level digital maturity example of something that can be applied right now that helps our industry. And I'm sure my fellow panelists have other examples.
Yes, thank you, Claire. Maybe I have one to add, and that is like something called hyper automation, a new term from Gartner, and that is mainly being driven by the availability of low and no code platforms. So building a software script, building an algorithm has become much more easier than like 10 years ago. You don't have to do things in C#. You have Mendix, you have like Power Apps, Power Automate, and it provides not professional IT developers a great tool to automate stuff. And I think especially in our industry, where we are always working with specific client needs in our projects, because otherwise they would go to the Home Depot here in the US, for example. The opportunity to automate those very specific processes for those client needs. So it's quite amazing to see that where in the past, you know, it's like you need to have software development teams to do all kind of stuff. Building very efficient, in a very efficient, quick way, algorithms to automating tasks has become quite doable, and also in a very safe way. So I think that in our industry that's going to make a huge difference. So who of the engineering companies who is providing their staff with those kind of tools to make a difference towards the clients can make a big difference in creating value.
I think for me, and in some ways I'm jumping into my answer to the second question, that sort of the outcomes, taking an outcomes first approach, one of the limiting factors is current business models. You know, the consulting engineering industry is for many years, if not decades, been one where it's based on time-based revenue. You know, engineers do define tasks for a fee. It might be an hourly rate, a half daily rate, a daily rate. But there are perhaps newer business models, you know, where you success-based pricing, value-based pricing, where you actually have stake in the success and the outcome of the innovation that you're doing. And there's a whole lot of contractual elements around that, as you know, my FIDIC colleagues know only too well. But that to me would be a real transformative change to the industry if we were able to move beyond time-based revenue. And some, you know, senior people, you know, from small to large engineering companies who've perhaps been in that world their whole career, that can be quite a threatening change. And I think the message often is you don't have to throw away the old ways of working, but you can layer this on top of that. You can innovate on top of your current ways of working. Try this, give it a go. You know, try something new, innovate. You know, do it at cost, or who knows, even do it for free and take a 10% cut on the savings you achieve for your clients. You know, these are sorts of innovations I think that really could move the industry forward.
But it's much harder to do than to say, Tony, because
I know.
I come from a slightly different industry, and I was and I arrived in engineering consultancy 2 years ago, and I just realized that if you have firms like where I work today, Artelia, or you take at Arcadis, or firms that have existed for decades or hundreds of years, these companies have spent all that time building their business environment so that it perfectly matches, you know, the existing business models, and everything is tuned to that. I mean, your ERP system is tuned to that. The way you make a business decision is geared at those types of contracts. And if you bring in a layer where the business model is different, that's what I'm trying to do, and I can see that
yes,
it doesn't work, because I can't. Everywhere I go to the finance guy, I say, oh, but it doesn't work. I want to make a decision about a long-term investment that goes beyond a single project. The governance systems don't work, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that puts us at risk, because, or at least it puts established companies at risk, because it's so hard to do that we will be slow, and a newer company, a startup, will be able to go really fast. Because they're not.
But I think one way to do that is to carve out, you know, a startup within the larger organization, just have something on the side operating in sort of startup terms, and able to sort of prove that concept internally, and perhaps then bring it into the ERP systems and so on, but gradually absorb that back into the main business. It's not about throwing away the old way of working in one go, but you can actually try something on the side and then absorb that back into your main ways of working.
Well, and if I could just add, I do think there's hope for that. At least in the United States, 2021 was a watershed year for new ways of working. Survey of AEC firms showed this was the first year in 2021 in which more projects were done based on fixed fee or lump sum pricing than done at an hourly rate. And that's super exciting, right? Because that's what frees up the funding to invest in digital transformation initiatives. And I think it shows we're sort of reaching that tipping point where there will be more money available. There is more money available for those types of investments. Now that's in the US, that has to spread to the rest of the world, but it gives me hope. Because you're absolutely right. When everything is charged hourly, it is difficult to initiate change because you're always looking to do it on the back of a project. And the more efficient you make things, the less money sometimes you make on an individual project. But I think the more we get to value-based pricing or fixed fee or lump sum or anything other than hourly time and materials cost plus, the more room we have for digital transformation.
Thank you, everyone.
Maybe a small build on that one for so indeed, I think it's also good to realize that in various countries there are various kinds of models. So indeed in the US it's very much time material based and now changing. But other countries in, for example, Europe, lump sum agreements are like the standard already for decades. So that's also what you see then if you in a global company. You see in some areas the digital transformation going quicker because a lump sum contracts will give you the opportunity. Well, in other countries, indeed, there is a different business model and it makes it difficult to really build a business case for it. Yeah.
Thank you, Bram. Thanks for building on top of that. A really fantastic discussion, and I know we're just scratching the surface of this. But I am going to move us on to our next big topic, which naturally I think leads on from this, and that's the question of the trends in technologies, which we've already started diving into. Where is the industry at, and what are we seeing? And obviously, I know depending on where you're at on your roadmap or your digital maturity, you'll be at sort of various spectrums here. But this is just sort of an initial conversation, so you'll. But let us see how we go. But Antoine, if you can perhaps kick us off on that question of trends and technologies, where are we at? What are we seeing? That'd be fantastic.
I think if you try to globalize it, and if you want to answer where we're at, I think unfortunately the answer is that we're way behind. I mean, we are clearly the laggards, and it was one of the big consultancies, maybe McKinsey made sort of a survey or ranked all the industries according to digital maturity, and I think we were like last behind agricultural, right? So that we just have to accept that. Where we've made the most progress, if I said there's, there's different components to digitalization. There's the people, the processes, the technology, the business model, the user experience. I think where we've made the most progress, probably the technologies. We've adopted pieces of digital technology, for example, BIM, right, or extended reality. However, my experience is this technology adoption is not systemic, and it doesn't span across the value chain, nor does it span across geographies. And that brings us back to the point that then how much value can you actually unleash from that if you just take a small slice of the whole digitalization journey? And I can give you an example. So Artelia is French headquarters, but we have a big team in Denmark. And you can see that if you look at BIM, you can see that the change has actually been systemic in Denmark. And I think it's probably true of all Northern European countries. So you'll see all stakeholders, from customers to engineering consultants to contractors, working on these the same BIM models, and they flow across the value chain. And therefore, there's a lot of value in them. And it's even actually now requested by law that you have your data in BIM models. Whereas in France, where I sit now, things, the value chain isn't connected to that degree, so that things are sliced up, and then there's actually there's much less value in BIM. And some of the customers, when we design a building, we try to sell them, BIM as an improvement to classic 2D design. they don't really see the point and they don't care. And actually, it's quite hard for us to convince them because we're not even convinced ourselves. If it's just about drawing a standard building, there's not actually a lot of extra value in going 3D, for example. So what we're seeing, what I'm seeing though, is that customers are starting to nibble at the digital. You see it in terms of reference, you see it in the way customers, the questions they ask. So it is coming. What I also see is that there is a fear, and I'm a bit nervous in saying this sitting next to Claire, but I mean, there is a bit of an organization like Claire's organization are a bit scary because there is that fear that a lot of the value is going to be grabbed by the tech companies, because we've seen that in all other industries. It's not the Uber driver who makes money, it's Uber, right? So there is fear about that. There's concerns about data, cybersecurity. And I see also in France, we see an emergence of value-based business models. For example, before there will be a tender to improve the energy efficiency of a building, and they will be requested exactly, change the windows, improve the isolation of the roof. Now there's a type of contract where the government goes and says, we want to reduce the energy bill of whatever our schools in the Paris region by 30%. Please bid on that. And that's I think a good example of outcome-based business models. And to finish, I would like, I've told you what I'm seeing, but I think it's also interesting to say what we're not seeing. And I think the biggest problem is that we're not seeing a very clear demonstration of the value of digitalization in our industry. It's almost the opposite. Like if you probably remember the story of this. Prefab is one of the aspects where our industry, can really create more value. And the biggest prefab company, I think it was this Katera in the US, backed by a Japanese SoftBank. They raised $2.2 billion and they went bankrupt. And, it should have been a success because prefabrication is part of, the moving forward the industry. So we lack the true success stories. We lack the Ubers, the Airbnbs of our industry. We also lack a recipe for how to do it. And I think that is really, really a problem because people like myself, I think Bram also and his organization, we really have to fight every day to convince the people sitting on the money to invest and to go this path.
Thank you, Antoine. To start off with, we are way behind. It was nice to, refreshing though, that we are on the way somewhere, albeit way behind. And with the nibbling customers, just in need of some recipes and so forth. But absolutely, I think that's such a clear message to take away. And I wonder if Tony, if you want to build on that with what you're seeing with the trends and the specific technologies out there.
Yeah, thanks, Stacy. And perhaps taking a different slant from the one Antoine's just covered. And I don't necessarily think we're maybe as way behind as the McKinseys or Gartners of the world say. But for me, although digitization, which remind us the optimizing of current ways of working, probably receives as much, if not more, publicity today as true outcomes-focused digitalization, I have seen a lot of genuine digital transformation in the industry, in small companies right through to the largest. However, for me, a key blocker of digital transformation is the length of the value chain that we're working in. And if I state that very simplistically, the value chain starts with finance and proceeds with planning, architecture, engineering, materials, construction, logistics, real estate, operations, maintenance, renovation, and end of life. And there's no mention of repurposing in that either. So digital innovations in engineering typically occur way too early in the value chain, and they can be lost or compromised by the time the ultimate beneficiaries are reached. And I've seen that happen many, many times, especially the compromised side of it, the choice of an IoT technology at the design stage and it gets swapped out later because something was cheaper, and yet the actual benefit of that particular choice then disappears as well. So as engineers, when innovating digitally, we need to ask ourselves who cares or who will benefit the most from our innovations. And this will show whether we are focused on just the project level or whether we genuinely have skin in the game for the achievement of those ultimate outcomes. And if you are just operating at the project level, which is often the case, ask yourself whether you could broaden your engagement with your direct clients, finding newer ways to add value at more points in the life cycle. And a goal here and this to me is a key goal of digital transformation in the industry, is to aim to know your client's client better than your client does. And if you can achieve that, you're well on the way to success. Now, the abundance of data supported by technologies such as IoT and artificial intelligence is creating opportunities for engineers to do just this. You need to find which data is of value and be able to assure its quality and its integrity to provide the insights that will help your clients, and again, their clients, make better decisions to achieve better outcomes. An approach we are following at Neural Raise AI as a digital services company working in the engineering industry is a collaboration model that starts with facilities and asset managers to get access to the ultimate asset buyers and owners, decision makers and consumers. That is the people in the value chain who care the most about the outcomes our digital innovations will make possible. And this also opens the door to newer and often higher margin business models that take us beyond time-based revenue, as I said in my answer earlier. So these include license-based product revenue, for example, with my company's RiskWell risk management software suite, as well as with value-based and success-based pricing. And through an asset management digital solution based around IoT, data science, and digital twins, we and our partners are aiming to tackle depreciation of large assets. That was the problem that was brought to us. That was the outcome we were asked to look at before there was any mention of technology. And this is a major problem for asset owners in the target region that we're focused on. So for this, we will offer success-based and value-based pricing, which we'll achieve using regular benchmarking and periodic reviews. And in the very recent past, I have worked at the engineering end of that value chain I mentioned earlier, and we very much lamented the disconnect between ourselves and the facilities and asset management companies. So today we're starting with the facilities and asset managers and inviting the engineers in to work with us and to lead on consulting and advisory work in key areas such as energy savings that can be achieved through the adoption of IoT and digital twins. So in conclusion, I truly believe that for all of us on this webinar, for our clients, and in working together, the potential value of our collective whole is truly greater than the sum of our respective parts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. I mean, that's a fantastic message, first of all. And second of all, thank you very much for those examples, or if I can call them case studies. I think it's really helpful to see specifically when you were speaking about the depreciation of assets and the problem that was brought to you, and it wasn't just throwing technology at it. Yeah, I think that was a really fantastic reality example for the audience. I hope everyone found that of use. Bram, if we could come to you next, and your views on the status of technology and trends.
I just also mentioned a trend already for automation, which I dropped in. But also let's go back what was just shared. I think that the pace in so one step back, I think what's going to happen in our industry is the same as what's happened in other industries. The mechanisms are still the same. You have this information, you automate stuff, you get platform players, all the kind of good stuff, more or less. It will also happen in our industry. However, because how our industry is organized, the lifespan of projects, the fragmentation of the industry, the fact that we have in the end physical objects which you cannot digitize. We don't have music which you can put on Spotify. We have buildings in which people are living in. That makes it our industry goes a little bit slower than others. And indeed, Antoine referred to the McKinsey slide where we are with agriculture and hunting. Now we can look at that, but at least we're going slower. In the same time, you see again the same mechanisms there. We see with BIM that information is available in a digitized format. And you see now across the industry that all kinds of initiatives to automate design become like prevalent. You see companies providing AI capabilities for design. They are growing. They are being bought by big tech companies, or they are being they go on as a start on the market and they are going quickly. So I think we are in the state of where we have digitized our processes to a certain extent. Now into the fact, can we now what can we automate now? And with that we see some companies moving into the new business models. Again, that is really very much like in other industries, only it goes like almost in slow motion. Therefore, it's often not visible for people busy with digital transformation in our industry, like super annoying and nerve-wracking. Why don't we move faster? It moves, but in a slower pace. But all the things which are happening in other industries are also happening in our industry.
Thank you,
Not sure that
Bram.
helps, Stacy.
It does. I mean, absolutely does. I mean, I think all of this is contributing to the conversation and hopefully to the wider industry discussion and evolution of it. I mean, in terms of moving slower, it'd be good at some point to discuss how do we move it faster and what are people's fears and all those sorts. But no, thank you very much, Bram. I think that's fantastic. Claire, would you like to build on that, perhaps?
Absolutely. And we'll start with what you just said, because actually Manish mentioned it in the chat. I think one of the reasons we move slower is we are a very risk-averse industry, and that is for good reason, right? Because people's safety is on the line. Health and safety is incredibly important. It's obviously paramount. And so there are reasons why we move slower. We have to be very careful. We are a very conservative industry, and it's for good reason. So I do think there is that to consider. But I think when I look at the trends that we are seeing, they're really all around. We've already talked about BIM. You know, the remote inspections, I think, have ramped up rapidly through drones, through the use of AI applied to what you're seeing on photographs to detect cracks, to detect rust. We see that with owner operators. And that has happened very rapidly because it's about safety. It helps improve safety. We don't have to have people hanging off the side of bridges or sliding down the side of a dam to look for damage and problems. So there it's happening rather quickly. I think Tony also makes a great point about the value chain. And so the more that we can partner across the ecosystem, while that is not a digital transformation trend in and of itself, partnering across the entire ecosystem and the life cycle of an asset helps drive digital transformation faster, because it brings the value that is received by the owner operator much more closely together with the choices that are made in design. Overall, I think the biggest trends that as Bentley we're seeing have to do with remote inspections. They have to do with the use of drones for reality capture, certainly have to do with digital twins and an ecosystem approach, because as a design firm, a digital twin is really just a visualization. Where you get the value is when it's a digital twin of the as built and as operated infrastructure. That's where the value comes in. And like Tony said, that's really reaching across the supply chain. And then the other thing that's really important was touched on by Vanessa in the chat, and that's the importance of data and data analytics, right? And increasing your insights and understanding of what you have and what you're designing and what you're creating or constructing based on the data that you can gather and the insights that you can glean on from it. And certainly the value of that comes really to the fore once it's actually an asset in operation. So for me, the biggest trends are extension across the value chain, digital twins, and data focus. We have all kinds of modern design tools that create amazing amounts of data, and we have to be able to manage and tap into that.
Thank you very much, Claire, and thank you to the whole panel. I think we could wrap this up, I think, and like discuss what we've just all been speaking about. But actually, I think this really moves us nicely into the general Q&A, because I think now we're in sort of a space where we've been talking about the trends and technologies, and digital transformation all feeding together into each other. And I think what we'll do is move on now into the Q&A, picking up some questions in the chat, and also picking up on what the panelists have heard from each other, so we can create a good conversation. I think if we could start with Claire, you just ended on, and we've had a couple, I think I saw one or two questions in the chat about data, about the wealth of data and analyzing it, the new roles that we're seeing. what are the issues there? Are we seeing new roles? What are the issues around data that everyone's seeing and that we need to be aware of?
There's a few different things. There's certainly the ability to tap into the data, because our data has historically been very siloed. We have design data, and then things get sort of passed off to procurement and construction, and that could be a whole different company, and all of the data doesn't necessarily all go with it. So we end up with a lot of orphan data, a lot of siloed data. That's why digital twins are exciting, because they can help sort of connect the dots from all the various systems and make that data visible for people. We have a lot of technology we can all apply now to gather data together and run analytics on it. But that brings up two really important things. If you eliminate the siloed problem, you have the problem of skill sets and attracting data scientists and data architects to engineering firms instead of tech companies. So there's a lot of competition there, which is difficult. So it's a whole new skill set. And the other thing, of course, is the security of that data. It means that we either all have to have very robust, when I say we, I mean AEC firms. Obviously, at Bentley, we have our security team, but engineering firms have to be really good at understanding what data they have, who can see it, what is private, and everything to do with all of that around data. And their overarching cybersecurity strategy has to be rock solid. So I think data brings up the ability to tie the data together, the ability to actually get people attracted to being in the engineering world as opposed to the tech world if they have those skills, and then being able to ensure that we've covered the cybersecurity risks associated with all of that data.
I can share.
I would add something to the recruitment of data scientists into the engineering world. I mean, I was a CIO at a global engineering company, a few years back, and had sort of mixed success in achieving this. What I found was there were many great data scientists in the organization, but they were very specialist into the particular sectors. They may be data scientists specializing in transportation or in energy or water or environment, whatever it might have been. And really what I was aiming to do, and what I've very much done in creating my own company, is to have a sort of a cross-sector data science specialism where the expertise is data science, and then working with those domain experts who actually understand those domains in absolute detail, be it transportation or what have you. So the actual data scientists tend to be motivated and interested in doing interesting solutions that are cross-sector, and enjoy actually moving from sector to sector to sector. So if you're actually giving them that opportunity not to be too siloed, too specialist within the organization, but to really, but data is the king. It's getting hold of data and innovating in meaningful ways on that data and not being tied there. And that can actually be a newer business model internally, a new structural model within some large organizations. There's another, sorry.
I realize that we talk about this and get a bit gloomy because we say it's complicated, it's expensive, we're last in class, etc. But I also experience on a daily basis, that I appreciate that there is a real business opportunity for us, and I'm experiencing that because when I meet customers that traditionally have asked Artelia to design a building or a bridge or whatever, maybe this is specific also to the old world where a lot of the infrastructure already exists. But the same people are calling us up with the realization that actually they have the data about their asset pools. And typically I'm talking about organizations that have large asset pools, that they don't have the data anymore. So actually they don't know their assets. And when you are in like a mature economy or an old world economy, the shift from building new to maintaining old or improving old is quite significant. So people are coming and have realized that data is of value, and they don't really know where to go. So maybe they're knocking at your door, Claire, going to Bentley, the software companies. They might go to the people who design their infrastructure, like engineering companies or architects. And it's really interesting. And the other, I think, reason why this is accelerating is that you see a lot of, let's say, heavy infrastructure being acquired by investment firms or pension funds. I've seen this a lot when I lived in Denmark, a lot of the offshore windmill farms, you would see, private money investing in that because it's a long-term stable asset. And when investment firms come in on a deal like that, usually, time is short and money is big. And they actually, in many cases, offshore wind is probably a bit of an exception because it's a new industry. But if you invest like in a water network or sewer networks, you don't know the asset. And it's hundreds of thousands of kilometers of pipes and there's hundreds of pumps and weirs and all that. And these guys don't really know the asset and they're about to put billions of dollars on the table. So from these perspectives, the need to better operate, to save energy, to in existing infrastructure, plus the financial side of it, I think gives us a window of opportunity to actually, come in as the people who know the assets, because we design them, we know how they work, with the help of technology such as what Claire, your company might provide. I think there is a real business opportunity.
Thank you, Antoine. That's really inspiring. And I think perhaps some of that opportunity may even help the industry, could it not be more attractive to attract those new skills and in the sort of data and tech field, perhaps even that will assist the situation. I think where this is leading to us actually, and we've had a couple of questions about this in the chat, I think I've seen, with this, the question around data leading to data privacy, cybersecurity. I mean, we've all seen in the press and the news the issues that are going on, and such a significant issue, threats it is at the minute. I wonder if we could move the conversation into security. Bram, perhaps you could assist with us, if possible.
Yes, thank you. And I really liked what Claire was saying, and I want to build on top of that. I talk now from my own practice. I know that everybody else is doing this in a much better way. But if you have a project for a client, what you do is you open a folder on your file server. That's where you dump all your tender documents and all your client data. And at the end, when you're finished, then you run away to the next project. I do that, of course, nobody else. And you open the next folder, and that's where you dump your information, and you don't know what you have in your previous folder. And that is, I think, and now we know that data becomes so invaluable, and that we want to that we move into like a knowledge-based environment, and that we want to monetize that data. It becomes super important to make the data available and to label that data and know what you have, and know how sensitive it also is, and democratize the data for your company. So I think that is, as one of the trends Claire mentioned, I think is a very important one. Now, doing so, then we get indeed in the era of data privacy and cybersecurity. If you look at the European regulation about data privacy, you need to be quite a lawyer to get your way through it and know what you can do, what you can't do. It's quite complicated, and and you have to be very careful if you are doing a survey in a neighborhood to know how people want to develop the area. Be very careful of anonymizing their data, for example. And so that's data privacy by itself, but then especially I think the combination with cybersecurity becomes interesting, because we all see in the news indeed that the amount of cyber attacks is increasing. If I'm not mistaken, quite recently a company in Australia has had a big data breach that comes in the news. You get reputational damage, you get clients don't want to work with you anymore. So, well, moving in that area of digital and all the data that you have, protecting that data, making sure you have your security set up well, that is not an easy thing anymore. That is really a big thing. You need to have like guards on the towers to protect your environment, and that comes with some significant investments. If you don't do that enough, then things will be stolen. You will be hacked. It is not a question if you will be hacked. It is a question when you will be hacked. And I think realizing that and have that awareness, I think that is super important for our company. You don't want to get into the news with your data on the street. There's not good publicity. You will be able to, you not where you want to be. And even worse, but what if criminals shut down your network? You cannot work anymore. So really the risks when it comes to cybersecurity, I think for every company needs to be number one in these days. Another reflection is that, and that's especially for the multinational companies, it becomes interesting, that with the increasing geopolitical tensions we see around the world, that nations are deglobalizing at the moment a little bit. I think it's not going back, but it's a bit of an how you say that, the singer of an up and down thing. I'm not sure how you call it in English. But now where we had like a lot of globalization, open boundaries, all that kind of stuff, now we see that countries are really deglobalizing and putting more focus on their national interest. You see companies opening ship factories to make sure they are less dependent on other countries. And the same goes with data. We see that countries are ring fencing their data. Now, what if you have a project, you put it on Microsoft Office 365, and that data is in the US, but your own company is somewhere in Australia, then your data is not in Australia, it is in the US. How do you deal with that? How do you make sure you still can operate and that data is there where it needs to be? And maybe there are specific client requests to that. So having people understanding that and be able to navigate it becomes quite important. Then you need more than just engineers who can, or civil engineers who can do like automation. You need to have IT and cybersecurity experts to navigate your way through those risks and through those how do you say that changes in global society.
Thank you, Bram. Does anyone want to pick up on what Bram's been speaking
to?
I
would echo again everything that Bram said. There's also the ethical use of data as well. I mean, for example, just as an example, something I was involved in once was, tracking motorists on a motorway or a freeway using mobile phones and being able to sort of get traffic patterns, going to an airport, for example. But that's anonymized data. But if you actually know where a phone starts its journey every day and where it goes every day, you can pretty much work out someone lives there and someone works there. And it's the protection of that operational data, the uses to which it's put. This why ethics committees and so on can be very important as well. In terms of the cybersecurity, absolutely. I mean, whether it's state or non-state actors, it doesn't matter. Cyber attacks will happen, and the cybersecurity needs to be built in from the outset. But I'd like to pick up a question that Manish in the US asked earlier. He said, can any of you address the issue of increased risks, if any, of cybersecurity and willingness of our client to try fail fast and fail cheap approach? After all, we're in life safety industry in the built environment. And absolutely. So what I was saying earlier about, think big, start small scale quickly, this experimental approach, that doesn't mean throwing away these good practices of absolute cybersecurity, but what it does mean is perhaps not over-engineering an experimental solution, being able to try something, try it in the real world, but get some initial feedback and see if it, test a hypothesis. I believe if we do this, this will happen. And there's only really three outcomes that happen. Then either you're wrong and you fail fast, fail cheaply, you're absolutely right, and then you build on that, or you pivot because actually you learn something surprising, and it's the pivot that's actually the more normal case. But in either way, if you take that forward, the proper engineering does come in, and when you actually build the thing into production, it's very well engineered. Proper cybersecurity is built in. So that's what I was meaning about failing fast and failing cheap and being experimental. It's not throwing away those good practices, but it's choosing the time to apply those into the complete solution.
I can just add to what Bram said. We, with certainly large customers, cybersecurity is top of the agenda, I can say, and it's top of the agenda at corporate level. And the agenda is set there, and then it trickles down to the whole organization. So if you have very large blue chip customers, those requirements trickle down to the smallest engineering project. And as Bram was saying, when you show up at a customer meeting, there can be people sitting across from you that you're not used to having at the table. and they'll be asking questions that you don't even understand the question, right? And let alone you have the people to answer the questions. And so I think we have to get used to a world where people will be asking to describe, what are our processes in terms of cybersecurity? What is our infrastructure? What is our technology? What are our processes? And we've seen customers saying, and we will audit you on this. Right? So there's some, task team from corporate that's going to come down in your offices, and they want to see everything, and they want to know everything, which is a real challenge because we can't show them everything, right? And some things we don't really know. We've been asked, we want to know the exact postal address of the server where our data is going to be. And if you ask Amazon for that, they don't give you the exact address. They can give you a region or a rough address. You don't get the exact postal address. So all these requirements are mounting, and which will probably push us into spending significant amounts of money to ramp up our processes, maybe be certified ISO 27001, things like that, and all those things have a cost, and they're really costly, and customers are less willing to actually then pay the extra bill for those things. So, but it's coming, and I think for blue chip customers, you can't really avoid it because it's centrally decided and non-negotiable.
And if I could just add one thing, I agree with all of that. I think cybersecurity is critical. I think data scientists are critical. Having a solid data governance strategy that includes people from engineering who understand the data that you have, that includes people from your security group that physically secure the data, and that includes folks from your legal department who actually understand GDPR and all of the regulations around data residency are all really important. But one of the things that I do want to just mention, because it does sound a little gloomy, all these skill sets that we need, one of the things we have to remember that AEC firms have, that tech companies have to some degree, but not as much, is we're a very mission-driven industry, right? We create infrastructure for the world. We solve problems like providing clean water and transportation and housing. And so those are things that we should leverage when we try to attract talent, is the mission that we all strive to deliver.
Thank you very much, Claire. And I think the word gloomy has come up several times now over the course of the past hour and a half. And I think to wrap up, I'm wondering if I could possibly put one question to all of you really quickly. I know we haven't discussed this before, but gloom and optimism. To conclude, to wrap up the session, as we're nearing the end of the time here, could you possibly, some of you each, say what you think the construction sector should be optimistic about for the digital future? Any points of optimism? What's on the horizon? What do you think?
I'm optimistic. I think we are mission driven. I think we are delivering the infrastructure that the world needs so desperately. I think the focus on sustainability and on carbon footprint is an exciting advancement. People are applying tools in order to be able to actually measure that. I'm optimistic about the fact that we are moving. We are talking about digital transformation, and lots of companies are doing amazing things. Look at Singapore. I mean, just take Singapore as a country. There's all kinds of amazing examples of digitalization and the application of digital transformation, not just in Singapore, but all around the world. And I think they will become more and more ubiquitous over time. So I'm optimistic.
I can give two reasons for optimism. One is that is the quality of our relationship with the end customers. I think we are trusted partners. We actually understand the object we're designing, as opposed to a software company, and that relationship has a lot of value. And the second reason for being optimistic is that even in today's bit turbulent political times with high energy prices, that there are definitely opportunities for revisiting our infrastructure, for example, energy infrastructure, the energy efficiency of existing infrastructure, and that will that is work for engineers and architects and construction companies, but it will be slightly different, but as challenging.
I'm also optimistic. I think we have no choice but to be optimistic, though. If we look at COP27 and what might come out of COP27, and how this industry will be involved in helping the world achieve those targets, be it 2030 or 2050 or whatever, there's a massive role for this industry to play. And we need digital transformation to be able to do it. It's about working together. And I'm seeing more and more examples of that, which I find really exciting.
Yeah. Now, I am an optimistic person by heart. And maybe go back to my land survey story. So a lot of guys, were a lot of guys on my education, not enough females. They started their own company and embracing like the digital technologies, and they have quite successful companies, grown rapidly in the last years, last decades. So I think if you look at those friends, I think they have done a marvelous job in embracing what digital can bring and turn it into their favor. And I see the same thing happening now also in our industry, in the engineering construction industry. The young fellows really taking on the opportunities. And yes, it's not easy, but they are getting there and they're growing rapidly. So I think digital technology brings a lot of opportunities for everyone. As long as you embrace them, take them to heart, and have the energy to keep on going and move things forward. And these have brought me a great experience and a great career. So I would say capture it, harvest it, be resilient, and keep pushing forward.
Thank you very much, Bram. I think that's fantastic to end on. Resilience, pushing forward. It's been a great hour and a half. Can you believe it? I think we've touched on everything from technology being not technology, but being gadgets. If you don't have people, processes, outcomes behind it, problems to address with them. We've dealt with everything from data to cybersecurity to you name it. I'm not even going to try and capture the sort of highlights of it, but I do want to say firstly a huge thank you to the panel for all of your insights, and for Claire getting up so early to join us today. We do have one last poll question, which I think is going to be quite helpful in some senses. Because the Digital Transformation Committee would absolutely love to hear from everyone out there. If you'd like to get involved with the Digital Transformation Committee, join the conversation. And this poll question here, now, which of the following do you see as the biggest challenge we need to solve for the successful digital transformation of our industry? We've purposely not put a fifth one, all of the above, but I just wonder, what do you see as the biggest challenge? A question to the audience: further advancement of technologies, changes in mindsets and cultures, delivering or employing new skill sets like we spoke about earlier, data scientists, software architects, or education of the industry. What do you think? This will help inform, I think, some of the discussions we'll have as a Digital Transformation Committee and going forward. Maybe a few more seconds. Changes in mindsets and cultures, 42%, followed closely by educating the industry at 31%. I'm not finding that surprising. I think that's absolutely, there's a whole host of things. However, changes in mindsets and cultures, and I think we touched upon that absolutely today. It's about people. So again, a huge thank you to the panelists and to the audience for being with us today. I think now we will have a few moments left, and I think Nelson is joining us back.
I'm with you, Stacy. I'm with
Excellent.
you.
Hello.
With you. Well, let me put it this way. It's been fantastic listening to the program so far. I've been away for about 4 or 5 weeks. I've been involved with the webinar, but I've been following it. And this is actually quite intriguing. Let me just start by echoing Stacy's word, which is really massive thank you to Tony, Anton, Bram, and also to Claire. And Claire in particular having to get you up early in the morning, looking as pretty as ever. And I know that, we've got Bram actually, which is, I believe you are in Toronto right now. It's good of you that you're able to join us. A massive thank you to all of you for your time and for Stacy for your leadership as well. Thank you very much. Let me just try and put things into context. She says she's not going to try and summarize. I pick up some keywords. I understand earlier on that we need to learn to fall fast and cheap. In another word, we've got to be prepared to take some risk. And the word I hear there is, test your hypothesis. It may work, but actually, if it doesn't work, it helps you to pivot. I hear the word data is critical, and we need to be mindful of data. But against that backlog was the issue, the whole idea of moving from analog world into digital world. That was a key point in that I pick up. And I also hear the word partnership is critical because nobody can solve the challenge by themselves. The word that keep coming through is cybersecurity. I understand data governance, and this issue is something we need to look at. But more important, I hear the word, we need to create digital value. It's not just purely going from one document into another world. Towards the end, I suspect that the key message that Stacy finished up with was, look, it cannot be doom and gloom. It must be really good. And what are the good things that we need to see? If I go back in reverse so that Tony said, well, the COP26 and COP27 are a good opportunity for us. We are going to be in that vanguard of change. And I also hear Antoine said, we are trusted advisor. People believe in us and they know that we're going to do the right thing. So it's important that we need to pick that up. So the opportunity for revitalizing our infrastructure was something I pick up in long saying that. Claire talked about we are mission driven. And I actually like that word, that we are mission driven. Our industry is to solve problems. So we need to focus on sustainability and we need to learn to move and maybe look at some good examples. She talked about Singapore. I think that was a big point for me. Singapore, I'm going to finish on that. That's where we're going to have our conference next year. So maybe you guys who registered, those who participated, and those who didn't participate, but we're following this on YouTube later on, you need to think about Singapore. This subject is going to be with us, whether we like it or not, and our industry is going to be in that vanguard of change. And I just want to use this opportunity to say massive thank you to you panelists and to those who actually, put question forward, including Manish. I see he's been pumping up question all the way through. I'm not sure where you are, Manish, whether you are in state or in different parts of the world, but wherever you are, those who put questions, thank you very much. Those who observe and listen, thank you for your contribution. And as Stacy said, if you do find that you are interested in what the Digital Transformation Committee is doing, I'm told not to say DTC, then please do drop us a note and let us know, because we have massive project ahead of us and we need every single individual to contribute. Without further say, we try to finish this in on time. We got 2 minutes to go, and I just want to use this opportunity to thank you to all FIDIC staff behind the scene, from Lisa, from Beatrice, and all of them who make sure that we are on time. And I just say, thank you very much wherever you are. Keep safe and God bless you. We do have a number of programs coming through. They're very much there, more on the committee, more on the state of the war. And we do have the FIDIC contract conference coming up in London. If you happen to be in London, join us. And moving on to the next slide, please. I think it goes without saying, thank you very much for engaging with FIDIC. Be on the lookout for our next conference or webinar, or maybe a note to Stacy and your suggestion on what you can do or support us. So wherever you are, keep safe. Thank you very much. God bless. Thank you. Bye.